Welcome to this edition of At the Mic. I'm your host, Keith Malinak. This week, I introduce you to the guy who was instrumental in building what you know today as BlazeTV. I'm talking the very beginning. I'll introduce you to Dominic Salvatore next. First, I want to talk to you about America's 40th president, Ronald Reagan. Did you realize back in 1984 when Michael Jackson was badly burned on the set of a Pepsi commercial, Reagan wrote a letter to the King of Pop offering his support while the singer recovered. In fact, Reagan himself suffered an on-set injury while filming a movie back in the 1930s. A gun was shot so close to Reagan's ear that he suffered partial hearing loss in that ear, which lasted a lifetime. Reagan's injury didn't slow him down in his acting career, his rooting out of communists in Hollywood, and eventually on to the governorship of California and, of course, the U.S. presidency as well. The great folks at American Pride Roasters Coffee have a perfect brew to honor Reagan with a blend which is available at aprcoffee.com. Oh, and don't forget to use promo code ATM for 10% off at checkout. Get you 10% off your entire purchase. Now, the Reagan blend is a powerful cup with a micro-lot blend of Colombian beans. It's got a sweet, bold flavor, memorable dark caramel edge. It's a treat for the coffee aficionado in your world as well as those who just enjoy a great way to start their Saturday mornings. Head over to aprcoffee.com, try the Reagan blend today, and at checkout, like I said, promo code ATM, 10% off. That's aprcoffee.com.
You're listening to At the Mic with Keith, an independent podcast production.
Dominic Salvatore is my guest this week. Dominic and I were hired by Glenn Beck. It wasn't even the Blaze then. We were hired within a few weeks of each other back in the summer of 2009. My goodness, over 13 years ago, we started working together for Glenn up in New York City. Dom was such a hard worker. I watched him every day, just work so hard, instrumental in building Glenn Beck's GBTV that eventually morphed into what you know as BlazeTV. Dom and I, we sat down and chatted about his interesting life for this week's episode of At the Mic. Here's our conversation. He's a great guy. I'm so grateful he could make time and so grateful that you could as well. Here's Dominic Salvatore, my guest this week on At the Mic. I'm going to call you Dom because that's what I call you, but do you prefer Dom? I've never asked you. It's technically Dominic Salvatore. Or is it Salvatore?
Right. Yeah, no, it's just Salvatore.
See, I can't get either first or the last name right, bro. It's amazing that you agreed to do an interview with someone who doesn't even know your name. So Dominic Salvatore.
Middle name Anthony. Yep, a man
Anthony,
with three.
Okay, wow.
A man with three first names. You know.
Wow, that's pretty impressive, dude. Okay, good for you. I will say that you were the first Dom that I ever knew, and I forgot what happened at some point. We've worked together at Glenn Beck's BlazeTV.
Yep.
And I don't know how it came up in conversation, but I didn't even realize that one of the most popular Christmas songs of all time was Dominic the Donkey until you told me this.
Yes, Dominic the Donkey, a chinkity chinky. I've only heard it a couple times in my life, you know.
I know. I've lived a sheltered life. So thanks for enlightening me on a Christmas song that I guess everybody in the world knew about but me.
Well,
all right.
Those that are Italian from, the New York tri-state area, basically. I think once you leave this radius of New York City probably diminishes past Pittsburgh.
Okay, I got you, because I was born and raised in the South, and I had never, ever heard that song. And when I met you, I was, 35, 36 years old. I was like, what is this? Anyways, and now I hear it places. But, okay, so, Dom.
Yes.
You and I met in 2009. We started within weeks of each other, working for Glenn Beck, as I recall.
That's right. And, I always forget that you came on board only like a few weeks prior to me, because you kind of seemed like you really knew what you were doing there, that I was like, this guy's must have been here for a long time. So you put on a good facade.
I was faking it. Yeah, right. I was totally faking it. Yeah, my first day with Glenn was August 3rd, 2009. Yours had to have also been in August, right? Maybe September?
It was. Yeah, I do know it was in August.
Okay.
But yeah, I think, in fact, the date like August 17th rings a bell to me for some reason.
Yeah.
Which would make sense.
So we worked together in New York City, and we also worked in Dallas together. We'll get to that.
Yeah.
But you were born and raised, like you said, in that New York tri-state area, correct? You were born in New Jersey.
Right. Yeah. A little town called Livingston, New Jersey. And we actually... My parents had a house in Clifton, New Jersey, until I was about 2 or 3, and then we moved to the famous Wayne, New Jersey, where everybody knows about Wayne because of Fountains of Wayne, and I think they sang that song "Stacy's Mom Has Got It Going On."
Stacy's Mom, and they had a couple of albums before that, like Radiation Vibe. I highly recommend everyone go and listen to that song. In fact, there's an album, Utopian Parkway. That's their second album that is just excellent from start to finish. And the reason I am going in depth here on Fountains of Wayne is because I don't want them to be painted as this one-hit wonder that had a music video with Rachel Hunter in it that everyone remembers. I'm telling you, such a talented band, Fountains of Wayne. People got to check this out. So you grew up in Wayne, New Jersey, where, if I'm wrong, because you told me, you're the reason I know about this. Fountains of Wayne is what?
It was original. It's long gone now, but it was one of the, it was a family owned business that was on Route 46, which is kind of a major highway that cuts through Wayne. And it was where you would go to buy like your, lawn ornaments, like big tall statues that, would have like a little boy peeing into a bird bath or something.
Classy.
Or you could buy like, your outdoor patio furniture there. And then just basically over time, Home Depot came in and just undercut these guys, and the family had to essentially sell the business and move on.
So that is a band that I was familiar with that I really liked for, I guess, 15 years before I knew the origin of the band.
Yeah, because they're not even from Wayne. I think they drove by Fountains of Wayne, and they were. Yeah. When you would drive by it, there were these crazy statues that was just like, who would put that on their front lawn? But apparently somebody would.
Somebody did, yeah. I mean, and you, Dominic Salvatore, are the reason why I know about that store that no longer exists, Fountains of Wayne. A very good band that people need to check out. Are you and I the same age? What year were you born?
I was born in 83. I am...
Oh my God!
Yes.
Okay, I'm old.
Yes.
You're not even 40.
No, almost. Okay. You and I are that generation of. It's like I knew what life was like before the internet. I remember even before AOL, there was things like Prodigy that had all those same kind of features. To date yourself a little bit. Yeah. And now, like my 6-year-old son knows how to use a tablet better than me.
It's fascinating to see. Myself, I am 46 years old. I will say that it's amazing that I show my 97-year-old grandmother how to use Roku.
Yeah.
Right? Because she doesn't understand it. I shouldn't say she doesn't understand it anymore because she's really taken to it. But I have to show her the Roku stuff. I have to explain to her how to use a tablet. My kids come along and they have to show me things on my phone. They have to explain to me different things in technology and how things work. It's just amazing to see the different levels of technology in the age range where that is in their, I guess, technological wheelhouse. But I was, as you were talking about life before the internet, I was thinking back. I got into college, University of Nebraska, 1994. I remember putting in an AOL disk, and just checking it out and thinking that was the coolest thing. While you waited, like literally, I'm not exaggerating, kids. You waited 5 minutes for the graphics on your computer monitor.
They would come down line by line from the top to the bottom.
Line by line. I could just see it like it was yesterday. And to dial in, you'd have to dial in through a phone line.
And you would pray that your mom didn't pick up the phone and disconnect you.
Right, yes, disconnect you. But I had forgotten about Prodigy until you said that. And
Prodigy.
Oh my goodness.
There was another one too before that even. I feel like I kind of got my hands dirty in, but I can't.
There was Mindspring. Right? Was that was an Atlanta thing? Maybe, I don't know. There's Juno. Yeah. If you recall that.
I used to play a lot also on Internet Relay Chat, which was mostly used for the sharing of files that might not be properly owned by those sharing them.
I see. Oh, I just remembered. Remember the first browser? And they got in a big thing with
Netscape.
Microsoft, and they destroyed it or something?
Netscape, which battled with Internet Explorer, and then they gave away Internet Explorer for free, so nobody had to buy Netscape anymore, and that was it. Bill Gates won that one.
Yeah. Yep. Yes, he did. Okay. So you grew up right there in the shadow of New York
it's
City.
Wayne is only about, I think it's like 17 miles to the Lincoln Tunnel. So, I mean, to give you an idea of how close it is, in the 90s when the Yankees were really dominating Major League Baseball with the core four that they had, we were able to walk out of high school, after the bell rang, not cut school, but then just jump on a bus for $4.50 right on the corner. And in a half hour, I would be standing in Times Square. It was so easy. We were able to go to the parade once when they won the World Series, and I still made it home for dinner. My parents had no idea that I went to the parade.
That is
I think
awesome.
I was 16 that year.
See, that is awesome because, I am a lifelong Braves fan. And they won the World Series in 1995, and there was a Braves parade. And I remember being one of the few people in school, like 90% of the school went to Atlanta for the Braves parade. And I was fuming all day, Dom, because I'm thinking to myself, none of these kids are nearly as big as Braves fans as I am. I should be at that parade. And here I am, goody two-shoes at school, just sitting in a classroom chatting with a teacher because I'm the only kid in there, maybe a couple of nerds in the back. Yes, too. So maybe about 3 or 4 nerds in the classroom. I should have been at that parade.
Waving at Greg Maddox.
So, but that's good for you. But of course, you guys, you Yankees fans, I specifically remember my boss back in the late 90s, early 2000s, radio legend Ken Charles. I would sit in his office every day for a meeting, he and myself and Pat Gray, who I work with at the Blaze currently. So we were in Houston, Texas, and I remember every day having to sit in that meeting and stare across from my sightline was this long, I want you to imagine this, you've probably seen it, this long, probably, 10, 12 foot long, narrow picture frame thing with, about 25 plus world championships that the Yankees have won over the years. And I'm just sitting there thinking, wow, Braves have won.
Yep.
They have won. Anyway, so good for you, Yankees fan. And speaking of the Yankees, I was going to get to this later, but since we're talking baseball in the Yankees, you ran into Bernie Williams, famous New York Yankee, if I'm not mistaken, at some point. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, so actually that was a really funny story because ironic, we would end up not even talking about baseball. So right after I had left Fox News to come work with you guys for Glenn, there was a great burger place on 10th Avenue. The bathrooms were all unisex, and everybody washed their hands at a central latrine kind of sink, if you would. So there was 7 spouts that were coming out, almost looked like a watering well for horses. So I was there. I was there washing my hands, and I'm all soaped up and lathered up. And I see this big guy comes walking in behind me, and I see his reflection in the mirror. And I was like, that's Bernie Williams. And so he realizes that I see him, and he's like, so, how does this work? You just use any bathroom? Because the bathrooms were just, they were like water closets. It's just a toilet behind a closed door. And I was like, no, it's all unisex. And then we all wash our hands together here. And he was like, okay, well, I appreciate it. I'm like, Bernie, I just want to tell you, man, I'm a huge fan. And he's like, thank you. And I could tell he thinks I'm talking about baseball. And I was like, I just saw you play on the Huckabee show. You're really an amazing guitarist. I had no idea. I had no idea that you were doing that when I was watching you play baseball. And he was like, oh, wow, thank you. And then he was even impressed that I knew he had a show coming up at William Patterson University, which is in Wayne. And I was like, I actually saw the alert that you're going to be playing at Willie P. I'm hoping that I could get there and see it. And he was like, oh, wow, man, thank you. It was just a really, really great meeting him. And then I was like, cool, I would love to shake your hand, but at this time I'm still washing my hands. So we kind of gave each other that COVID elbow, if you will. Hey, man, right? So,
elbow.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's awesome, man. So I had no idea.
Yeah, very, very well, too. And classical guitar where none of that, wow. I don't know how to play guitar, but if you think of it like a band like Nirvana, how it's all major power chords. So When you watch Bernie play, though, his fingers are flying over the keys like Elton John on the keyboard or something. You know, his fingers, I should say, are flying over the strings. There's no keys on a keyboard, dumb.
Well, a keytar.
Yeah, we're a product of the 80s.
So you were too nice of a guy to say, by the way, can I just say, Bernie, it's wrong that you are so talented in multiple areas. Okay, jerk, get out of the bathroom now. I can't even look at you. Baseball superstar and primo guitar player. Get out. So we will revisit your childhood and growing up in New Jersey, because I know there's a big story that from that we need to get to. But let's fast forward for a moment here. And you went to Manhattan College.
Yep.
Yeah, I guess you wrote in here, alumni include Rudy Giuliani. That's pretty cool.
And James Patterson, also the famous author.
Oh, very cool. Okay, so what did you major in there? I don't want to assume. I know your career, but did you go to school for broadcasting then?
Actually, it was a communications major. So, and what's funny, what's funny, so to back up to even going to Manhattan College, the reason I wanted to go to school in New York City was I should tell you that I had an amazing high school television teacher named John Randall, who was actually, he worked at MSNBC, and he retired from there with I think a great pension, because they used to do those back then. And and he took up teaching as his second career, but he taught us everything like SOTs and B-roll and how to produce a package. So that I was, by my senior year, I had already had 3 years of television experience, from editing on Media 100, which I think eventually became Final Cut Pro. I was also editing on tape-to-tape decks. So I was really into this idea of like, I want to be in movies or TV or something. So it was like, well, the places that those happen in are New York City and Los Angeles. And I didn't want to go as far as Los Angeles to go to school, or, go to California to go to college. And it was my senior year. I would end up having free tickets to go see a movie called Chocolat that was a screener copy. And afterwards, I was asked to stay and speak in a focus group. And so in the focus group, there was about 10 of us. And I talked a couple things about the movie, how I think at the time the movie, when we saw it, was in black and white, and I suggested that like at the end of the movie, maybe like, when the town comes back to life because the chocolate is so good, that you should bring the color back into the film. And a woman named Meryl Poster, who was listening in on the focus group, it turns out was the executive producer of this Academy Award-winning film, Chocolat. And she approached me after the focus group and said, listen, I thought you spoke really well, and I would love to have you intern in my office.
Oh, cool.
Now, at the time, I don't think she realized that I was still in high school and that I was only a senior in high school. Uh-oh. And, this was kind of a really good thing, though, because like with all the stuff going on at home, I had brought home some good news to my parents. Like, this person from Miramax wants me to come work in their office. What ended up happening, I called her office. I spoke to her assistants. They're like, absolutely, any day you want to come in. Meryl said, it's fine. You can come by. So I came in, and I would eventually start going there like every Tuesday and Thursday. I would get out of school and hop on that bus we talked about. And I would go down to Franklin Street in Tribeca and work in her office till about 7 o'clock at night. And when I mean work in her office, like, dude, some of the stuff I had to do was like your typical PA kind of work. Like we need 10 copies of this script that is 300 pages long. So like, So, like it sounds like an easy task until like the feeder and the photocopy machine breaks, and now the pages are out of order, and you're like, oh my God, I have to start all this all over. Oh, it was supposed to be 3-hole punched. Okay, now I got to change the paper out. And so I was there like doing these kind of like administrative duties, things basically that I could tell her assistants didn't want to do. And it was cool. I was just happy to have my foot in the door at a big place like Miramax, because at this time, before Harvey Weinstein came to be known for what he is today, Miramax was known for like Pulp Fiction and, the Jay and Silent Bobs, and also Dimension Films was part of Miramax. So you had Scary Movie and I Know What You Did Last Summer, like all those kind of cool stuff that I was like, And my dad was pushing, like, just make sure you're always nice there, like always be a good kid, and like just anything they need you to do, just go ahead and do it for them, because maybe like, you go to school in New York City, you maintain this internship, and you can get a job there when you're done. So that was kind of why I was like, all right, I need to go to a school in New York City. And the best school for me was looking like Fordham or Manhattan College. And Fordham, I got waitlisted on. And then it was like I got the acceptance letter to Manhattan College. And ironic, Manhattan College is not actually in Manhattan. It's in a very nice, posh neighborhood called Riverdale, which is in the Bronx.
Wow.
It was once in Manhattan, so they kept the name.
Yeah.
They kept the name. So my parents and I jumped in the car, and within 35 minutes, I was standing on the campus of Manhattan College, and I said to my parents, like, yeah, this will work for me. I can get on the subway right there. And so I went to Manhattan, and I had a communications major, but they didn't really have a TV program going yet. They were kind of in the beginning of doing that. And when I saw their TV studio, I actually kind of smirked, like, John Randall had a better setup for us. We had better gear at the high school. So I was like, Manhattan College kind of just fit the bill there for me, because it was like, oh, I can get a communications major. And at the time, everybody was getting communications degrees, to be honest. It was a really great school. It's a private school. It has a really good alumni. And then I was able to go right down to Miramax and continue my internship. So it really, it worked out great. And then also I was close enough to home that my parents could still like touch base with me. Yeah. I could touch base with them.
Yeah, that's great, man. That's really cool. So you learned TV in high school. You went to college for it. You had the Miramax internship. How did you end up at Fox News and then eventually with Glenn Beck?
Yeah. So part of Manhattan College's curriculum, for a communications major, was you had to have an accredited internship. And Miramax was not essentially on the roster of Manhattan College at the time for having accredited internships. Eventually, after 2 years of interning at Miramax, and I even worked there a little bit freelance, like during my sophomore year, it became too much, and I cut ties and I focused more on schoolwork. In my senior year, I knew I had to get an internship. There was a career department at Manhattan College that would basically look at what you've done, in the last 3-4 years that you were at school, and they would line you up with an interview. And as luck would have it, I end up interviewing for an internship on the O'Reilly Factor with Bill O'Reilly. And I had to be honest, I didn't even know who he was at the time when I was doing this interview. And in my head,
name and town.
Yeah. And in my head, I was like, I just need this internship so I can get this very expensive piece of paper my parents have been paying for, so I can move on and like do my next thing from there. So I just really need this internship. But that same good work ethic that my dad taught me, like be nice, be kind to everybody. They offered me an internship to work on the O'Reilly Factor, where I worked side by side with a man named Jesse Waters, who who his career has kind of gone in a different direction than mine. But yeah, he at the time was an associate producer and essentially took me under his wing. I was fortunate that I had this interview on the O'Reilly Factor, and I started interning there, doing the same kind of things almost that I was doing at Miramax, but instead it was for a show. So it was like, you got to run this tape up to the control room, run this tape to playback. This person needs this. And honestly, that television class I had in high school, John Randall's class, everything he taught me there was the same exact terminology that they were using. So there was another intern on the show who I could tell I kind of had a step ahead of him, because I was explaining to him, like, this is a newsroom service. This is where they're looking at, essentially the rundown of the show and how you could follow what's going to happen step by step in the show. And he didn't understand those kind of things. So that what would happen, I eventually hit my 100-hour mark or something that was necessary to suffice for the requirement of the internship. And I was like, you know what, like, I wanted to just get my internship over with and get back to school to focus on my thesis and enjoy the rest of my summer, more or less, to be honest. So when I told them, listen, I've hit my number, I've hit like the amount of hours I have, I was just going to give you guys like a 2 weeks notice and let you know, I really appreciate all the time here. I want to go back to school, focus on my thesis. They said, oh, actually, it's great that you're here. We were thinking, Geraldo Rivera has this brand new show, and we were hoping that you would be interested in becoming a production assistant on it. And so it was like, yeah, but, I still have to finish college. And they're like, oh, yeah, that's no problem. You can work nights and weekends. So the last 3 months of that spring semester, I was working Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And I had class on, Monday to Wednesday, essentially. And I worked there as a freelancer on Geraldo's show. And then when I graduated, I came in and I said, listen, I'm not going to be here tomorrow. I'm walking for my college graduation. And they're like, oh, that's great. Well, if you're a graduate, now you can be a staff employee here. So then I became a staff employee on the Geraldo Rivera show at large, which was syndicated. It replaced a current affair. And again, back to John Randall being a great teacher, he taught us how to use these tape-to-tape edit reel systems that are made by a company called Tascam. And it would turn out that Fox News in their edit bay had the same exact decks and the same exact gear.
Oh, great.
So one day, my job as the PA was I had to work with an editor who would put together the B-roll clips and the sound bites that we would bring to playback to play out for the show. So one day the editor was running late and I sat down in front of the gear and I started cutting a soundbite, but the vice president of the edit department came in and he's like, what are you doing touching the equipment? And I explained to him, listen, I'm sorry, I'm on a deadline. I actually know how to use the gear. So I thought to keep the show on pace, I would just cut a couple tapes until I waited for the real editor to get here. So he kind of was like, huh. And he realized what I was doing. He watched the tape that I cut and he was like, yeah, you did this correctly. Okay. And then as luck would have it, 2 months later, lucky for me, but not so much for Geraldo, the show was canceled. And that same individual, Ken Schwab, good guy, he offered me a job to work in the edit department. And he even gave me a considerable 50% an hour raise, which was great for a young guy at my time. I was like, oh, wow. Yeah. Because, we make such millions and millions of dollars working.
We're actually rolling in it. In fact, I don't know about you, but on this end, I have just padding a chair that I'm sitting in. It's a little bit uncomfortable. I just have wads of cash that I'm using as stuffing inside this chair.
Completely get it. Yeah.
Is that what you've got? The setup on your end is like?
Yeah. Yeah. I like to use $2 bills. They just smell better. So stacks of $2 bills this way too. I can write notes on them to hand them to people too. Right. Yeah. So then I would be fortunate that I would end up meeting Tiffany Solomon when Glenn launched the 912 Project, and I cut the show open for his show on Fox News for that. And Tiffany loved the way I cut it, that she said, we have some more work that we do at Mercury Radio Arts with Glenn. I think you would be a great fit for us if you want to come by and just start doing some freelance work. Okay. So then I would swing by and shoot. He had a podcast or a vlog with Goldline, and I used to shoot his stand-up and then basically take the video home, edit it, and post it on the website for him. And then after doing that for 4 months, they said, why don't you just come work for us full time? So
I love
it. The long story, I guess, to a short road.
and that's where you and I cross paths. Yep. I will say that you and I used to, on occasion, we'd walk to lunch there in the city before having to come back.
Oh, Park Italian. Yeah.
Yeah. So you just got to imagine this, okay? Here's the odd couple. You've got Dom Salvatore, born and bred up there in New Jersey, very familiar with New York City and the deli situation up there. And then you've got this Southern boy, Keith Malinak, who couldn't find his way around my neighborhood here in Texas, much less the city streets of Manhattan. So you and I would go to lunch at this deli, and you would be speaking, it's almost like a different language,
Right,
You'd be talking to the guy behind the counter, and I was just like, tell him I want this.
Yeah, can I get some mozz with the prosciutto?
And by the way, Dom, you'll be proud to know that to this day I put mozzarella on my sandwiches and get those little mozzarella balls, all because of Dom Salvatore. I think of you all the time whenever I buy mozzarella at the store. So I'm not kidding. That's not a lie. So because it's not, I don't want to say I was intimidated in these settings, but it's just like a club where I don't know the language. I don't know the rules. It's like going into a Starbucks. I don't know how to order a coffee there. I just say, yeah, I want whatever this thing is here. And so you were kind of my go-between between me and whoever was, behind the counter. Say, all right, what do you have? What do you want? What do you want? Anyway, so I appreciate you and our time there. It was a good time going to get lunch with you.
Always, man.
Growing up in the city and at least in that area of New York City, are you glad that you grew up in that setting, or as you eventually would move to Texas to work for Glenn here where I'm based, I get the impression that you in Texas were a fish out of water because you were here for a very short time before you said, you know what, we're moving back.
We were there for 20 months. It was exactly 20 months. And, my wife and I had only been married for 6 months when I was like, hey, listen, we have to pack our stuff up and move. And she comes from an extremely tight Jersey Italian family. Like they have the Jersey accent to the nine and everything. And so that was, and she also went to school in New York City. So she was always close to home. So the idea of moving was a little dramatic, but I found it exciting. I really do love Texas and I would love to retire there. The people were extremely friendly. But at the time, maybe a little bit of this too was, so when we moved to Texas, well, let me answer your first part of that question. Like growing up in New York City, I think it made me a lot more aware of basically there's lots of different people that look different, but trust me, the people that you think look friendly are not friendly. And the people that look different might be the best guy you've ever met, that it opened my eyes to really this is the true melting pot of America. And everyone here is trying to strive to do the same purpose, but provide a better life for themselves and their families. So when we moved to Texas in January of 2012, and an unfortunate thing would happen in March of 2012. My best friend Nate passed away unexpectedly. He was 28 years old. And so that was like a real punch to the stomach, just absolutely amazing guy, to the point that we named our son after him. Oh. So that honestly was a real gut check for me, because then I was like, man, I'm now in Texas. My wife and I have each other, of course, but everybody that I'm talking to here about this grieving I'm going through doesn't know who this man is that I was talking about, so it made it harder for us to, I almost want to say, assimilate into Dallas, especially in that first year. That first year was really hard because I was just grieving my friend constantly, but everybody there, was supportive, of course, yourself included, and all the other people from Mercury. And, eventually, it became apparent to us at our age that we really wanted to be around friends and family. Also that first year that we were in Texas, in 12 months, we went to something like 14 weddings back in New Jersey. So it was like, it just felt, oh my God, man, it felt like every 3 weeks we were getting on a plane to go to a wedding, and it was like a wedding you had to go to, because my wife or I were in the wedding. It wasn't like, that distant second cousin of yours is getting married. It was, no, this is your brother, like my wife's brother or something, was getting married. So we always had to come back, and then it was hitting us like, Texas is great, but our friends and family aren't there. Now, so, and I had made a promise to my wife too, that I said, listen, you got to give me 2 years. We move down there. We'll see how it goes. You give me 2 years. And if we don't like it, I'll tell Glenn and company that, listen, I have to go home. So I'm going to have to give you my notice. My wife and I are moving back. I had expressed interest because the notion came up in the office that we were going to expand and open another office in Washington, D.C. And luckily, that's what would happen. 20 months after living in Dallas, Eric and Glenn and company offered me the opportunity to go to the small studio that we split with FreedomWorks. And that was great.
And then eventually you end up working for CBS News, where you are currently, right? Up there in New York. You're back in New York.
Yeah, so I've been at CBS News now since August of 2014. So it'll be 8 years and basically a month. I would get a phone call from a really great guy named Phil Selby, who said, listen, I have your resume here in our system, and we got this new thing going on. I would just love to talk to you. And now at this time, though, he was looking at a resume that was a year old, and I was working in D.C., so he was like, is it going to take, when's the soonest you could get up here? And I said, well, I could be there tomorrow. Like, I'll show up tomorrow. So I might have woken up with a scratchy throat that morning and a little bit of a fever, and I had to call out sick from work at the DC office. And between you and I, I knew that there was an opportunity waiting in New York, and I drove up. And I drove up, and I had no idea what the job was or what he really wanted to talk to me about, but I knew, look, there's a possibility here of something. So I showed up wearing a suit and tie, and I could tell that I was way overdressed, but it's better to be over it.
Yeah, dude, this is broadcasting. You know better than that, don't you?
I do. But, you don't get a second chance at a first impression, right?
Yep,
so Phil and I end up just chit-chatting for, I want to say, at least a solid hour, maybe more. And he starts explaining how, listen, we're breaking CBS News, is a household name. It's been a legacy in the industry for years, but it doesn't compete with 24-hour networks like Fox News, CNN, because at the time there was no 24-hour platform. And he said, it says here that with your experience, you were involved in building a 24-hour network for Glenn Beck, and we think you'd probably be a good fit to become an operations manager here. So, and at the time, they didn't even know exactly what they were going to call the stream. When they hired me, they were still like, title still to be determined of what we're going to call this new product. And it would become known as CBSN.
Right. And by the way, sorry to interrupt you there, but I use this service on Roku all the time. Like if there's something going on in the news, and I started using this before I knew that you were working there. Like when you had left, I didn't know that you were doing that specific thing, CBSN, but I found it so useful. If there is something going on in the world and I just want to cut to the chase and get right to it.
Well, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll just open. I specifically have opened up that app on Roku and just looked for the latest video on that topic. And ta-da, there it is.
It's great. I mean, honestly, I think we were definitely, look, the Blaze was the originator, though, I'll be honest. Or, Glenn Beck's Insider Extreme, which became GBTV, which then became the Blaze. They were really the first OTT news network, I want to say, that was like made strictly just for the internet first. And then with CBSN at the time, like they were trying to compete on the broadcast side with Fox News. But if you looked back in 2014, like with Fox News and CNN and MSNBC, they had streaming services, but all they were doing was taking the product they made the day prior, like the O'Reilly Factor or something, and they would put that up into their Roku apps for you to watch segments. But it was never like, this is a purely 24-hour news stream that you can continue to watch. And that's what we created with CBSN. And since then, I was brought on as a technical operations manager. So I was managing a staff of about 25 guys that did audio. They were directors that were operating automation systems for the camera switching and graphic playouts, as well as some stagehands that I managed. So I was doing that along with small video engineering projects to keep the show afloat and to tech manage as well in the control room during live shows. So I had my hands in a lot of different things from the beginning with the staff and the technical build out. And then about 4 years ago, they offered me a promotion to now I've moved away from the people operations side and I strictly manage gear and technology for CBS News as a whole, underneath the Paramount umbrella.
Wow, good for
So
you.
it's thank you. It's been, and I still work for Phil, and he's an absolute great guy.
Oh, that's cool.
And to be honest, he's probably the reason that I have no ambition to leave CBS News, because it's just, when you find somebody that's a delight to work for,
that's good to hear.
Yeah,
that's good to hear. And I can see why you would still work for the same boss after all this time, because when you and I worked together, I remarked to more than one person that the hardest working guy here at the Blaze is Dominic, and I
appreciate that. I don't know if I agree with you, but
well, whatever, man. I've seen you put in really long hours. You were very instrumental in getting the first iteration of GBTV, and then
Insider Extreme.
Right.
That was Insider Extreme, I think, was really the brainchild. Well, at the time, Glenn was he had that single camera feed that would go to a real player in the website, and people were paying, I think, $2.99 a month to watch him do his radio show through that. But it was just this SD camera that was a square. The video put out was a square. It was used and he said, "Look, I want to upgrade this," and I think that was also.
It was so rudimentary, Dom. It was in a room. We worked on the 34th floor.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
And it was this long hallway, and so basically, let me paint the picture for folks. On this one hallway, there was this room that was almost like glorified storage. And then there was Glenn's studio, and it, of course, was on the same HVAC unit as my phone screen room. And, he would freeze me out every day because, for whatever reason, they had the same.
Yeah, he always wanted to hang meat in
I seriously,
studio.
And I tell people this, and they don't believe it. I would wear a coat in the studio. It didn't matter the time of year. I would wear a coat in the studio. I would keep a glove on my left hand. Yep. I would edit the weekend show and promos that we would send out to all the radio affiliates with my right hand. This is when the show wasn't going on and I wasn't screening calls. This is the stuff that Dom and I would do the radio stuff, go eat lunch, come back, and eventually it was the 4th hour, Pat and Stu and so on. But then I would have to edit all this stuff in this, like you said, a meat locker. And I was in this winter coat, glove on my left hand, edit with my right hand, and I kid you not, right next to my mouse, there was a candle that I would edit as much as I could stand, and then I would hold my hand over the candle right until it would burn, and then I would go back to editing, and then I would switch off, and hover over the candle and heat up my hand until it would almost burn, and then back to editing. It was ridiculous. Yep. But anyway, and then the next room down was your office, where you would run the video stuff,
that was a lot of fun,
right? And you got to design that room all the way you wanted, if I'm not mistaken, and get it all set up because you were proud of it, man.
Yeah, I was. I mean, honestly, Glenn, it was a great opportunity to come work for you guys, and especially again on on a startup, where it was like, oh wow, we're building this from the ground up. So there's no rules, and Glenn also had really great engineers working with him. John Creeley, great engineer, man. And so we installed 6 cameras that were robotic. So I was sitting in front of a joystick that looks no different than something from an arcade, where I was able to control 6 different cameras, and I was punching the cameras on what was called a TriCaster. And so I just remember the array of monitors that we built was beautiful, because it was like, over here's where I see the cameras, here's where I cut the cameras, and on my right-hand side is where I can see the stream is going out and it's live, and I'm also capturing it directly into edit for post-productions. So it was,
and if I'm not mistaken, because on more than one occasion, I was tasked, like if you were swamped or we were running late or whatever, I had to run down and
punch the cameras.
The room behind your room was more like an engineering type room, and like you had to go and manually start the feed, the stream out to people. I mean, that's old school stuff going on there. And you mentioned John Creeley, and I'm so glad you did. That man's responsible for me getting to Texas because, like you said, January of 2012, Glenn moved his operations here. You joined him. Yep. And my family moved here April of 2012 into Dallas. And I didn't get here until July, I believe, 20th, 2012. The reason it was such a delay is because they hadn't built out the call screening center, because the numbers, when people would call the radio show, they were still calling New York, even though Glenn was in Dallas, and the technology just wasn't caught up to get everything moved to Dallas for whatever reason. And John Creeley took it upon himself to rig this setup that enabled me to finally get to Dallas. And I'll spare all the technical details, but he explained it to me, and John Creeley's a genius. Can we agree on that?
Yeah, absolutely. No, really smart guy.
Okay, so you obviously we've gone over your professional jobs during college and since with Fox News, Glenn Beck, now CBS News. I've got to touch on two jobs that you have had when you were younger, because New Jersey is so unique in that.
I know where this is going.
Yeah, and I'm gonna say there were a lot of things that this Southern boy didn't appreciate about New Jersey, and one of them was the fact that people at gas station attendants didn't want me to pump my own gas, and that was your job, right? It
was after freshman year of college, that summer break you have before your next fall semester. I had been dating the same girl my senior year of high school and the first year of college. She actually lived a half hour from me, though, in another town. And we broke up, and I thought, maybe I should get a job in her town so that I'm around and we can try spending time together to get this to fix or work, So I happened to be my cousins also lived in this town, so it might have been when I was over there and I had to pull over and get gas, and the guy and the gas station owner and I just start striking up a conversation. And he was like, if you want, I need a new attendant if you're looking for summer money. And I was like, yeah, sure, that would be great. But so my parents were like, are you really going to drive 30 minutes to go make like $7 an hour at a gas station in another town? Like, you could just make that money here and not waste a quarter of a tank of gas to get there or something, And I was like, oh, no, it's all right. I got a plan. My plan did not work out at all. That relationship was definitely over, and it's okay. It ended mutually. It was fine. Also, I one night would forget to turn off the pumps, and I was supposed to open the station the next day. And so I showed up to work 2 hours late because, being a young man, we might have spent some time up late and drinking adult beverages. So I ended up oversleeping, and I'm supposed to be there to open the station. And the owner of the place called me, and he's like, there's another gas station across the street, and I'm friends with the owner there, who's telling me right now that none of the lights are on and there's people walking up just pumping their own gas and leaving. What's going on? And I was like, I'm on my way. And he's like, okay, when you get here, we're going to talk. So he beats me there, and he's like, listen, I lost like $240 worth of gas today. It was something like that, and he was like, the way I see it, I don't really think this is acceptable. And I agreed with him. I'm like, you're totally right. I forgot to shut off the pumps last night. And you know what, with this and what this other thing that I didn't mention to him, I'm like, maybe it's just best we go our separate ways, and you can just keep the week's pay that you owe me. And he was like, well, no, we'll be fair. There's some money left on your paycheck. And I was like, okay, all right. And he goes, so here, let me count it out for you. It was $7. He gave me $7, and he's like, now we're even. You paid for all the gas that I lost. And I was like, all right, fair enough.
Oh, and my goodness. Now,
and then I was like, can I get 5 regular now? Because I got to get home.
If that were today, that $240 worth of gas would have probably been over $2,000. And the word would have spread on social media, and people have been lined up trying to get the free gas. So, okay, you're married to Jackie, who you describe as having the biggest impact on your life.
Oh, I mean, so funny story, we met about 5 years after graduating college at that, everybody has that like Wednesday night party before Thanksgiving you go to. And this was at a friend of a friend's house. And I saw her across the room, and I knew who Jackie was in high school. She's 2 years younger than me, but she was an amazing athlete, like 4 years varsity soccer. She had a full ride to play for the University of Hofstra. So she had a very, Class A reputation, you could say, and she was obviously gorgeous. And so when I went up to try to talk to her, I didn't even know how to say hello, which was very unlike me. I'm normally jump into a conversation with anybody about anything. And I mumbled over a bunch of words like, I think I know you, but we went to high school together. Blah, 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 I'll see you later. And I left. And in my head, I was like, man, I really blew that one. And I distinctly remember her from high school too. And me in a way having a crush on her that I was like, wow, that girl's really pretty. But you're in high school and you're a senior, you can't like talk to sophomores. It might be weird and awkward. But yeah, so as luck would have it, and thanks to today's technology, about 4 days later, she sent me a Facebook friend request. So I was like, this is great. I didn't completely embarrass myself, right? So we would start exchanging messages on Facebook, like the typical, like, so how's it going? What's your day like? Where do you work? And then that would eventually just lead to us dating. And I knew after 3 months of dating her that I was like, I absolutely have to marry this girl. She's amazing.
That's so cool.
Just has the same family values, understands me as a person in that short amount of time. And so after 3 months, I knew I had to start putting together all the coins I could find under the couch. And at 8 months, I proposed. And luckily for me, she said yes. And it's now been 11 years and 2 kids later.
How great.
But yeah, she keeps me completely grounded and, helps me see the writing on the walls of what we have to do to be better people. And being a better person I can tell me just being with her makes me a better person because I want to do more for her and our kids. And without them, I don't feel like I would be much of anything, to be honest.
Okay, so your son's almost 5. Your daughter,
my son. It's so funny, man, that we've been trying to get this thing going for 2 years.
This happens every time. This happens every time where there's something outdated in the email. I love it. Okay, so let me start over. Your son is 5. Your daughter is going to be.
My son is good. Here you are. My son turned 7 in September.
Wait a minute. Hold on a second. No way did you fill. No. Hold on.
Did I screw it up? Did I screw up when I
Absolutely.
answered your question?
I have not had this email in my possession for 2 years, bro. I haven't even been doing this podcast barely that long. No, nice try. You don't know how old your kids are. Why don't you tell us?
Now you have me second guessing myself. No, yeah, my son is turning 7. He was born in the year 2015. My son turns 7 on September 17th of 2022. He will be 7 years old.
I assure you, I have not had your answers in my possession for 2 years. So work on. Yeah, it has to be. It has to be. There's no chance. Although now, okay, you know what? Forget this. I'm gonna look this up. Let me just see. I'm looking up. I want to see when you actually answered these questions and just to see. Because now I gotta know. Because you talk about time flying, Tom. If I have had your answers this long,
2020. Yeah, you sent them to me. I have it as Wednesday, July 22nd, 2020. I wrote, I'll answer these questions now. You want me to forward you the email?
Oh my gosh. No, I see it on my end.
Dude, I can't even believe it's been, wow.
Hold on, that is unbelievable. This right here, this experience with us in realizing how long, it's been over 2 years now, that I have had these answers in my possession. What that illustrates to me is, A, we don't stay in touch enough, but B, how busy we are in scheduling our lives. But C, what this shows me is that, my goodness, time absolutely flies, man.
It's crazy, right?
It just vanishes. It vanishes. And before you know it, your kids will be out on their own. Right. Yeah. So when you and I met in 2009, I had a 6-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 1-year-old. Today, I have a 19-year-old who lives in another state. I have a 16-year-old and a 14-year-old. I mean,
so and those are the same kids, right? You didn't trade them in for other kids?
Yeah, I didn't trade them in. Okay, so hold on, real quick. I want to touch on. I moved past the jobs too quickly. Real quick, tell us about, this doesn't sound like it went so well. You were a landscaper for a week. Oh my goodness. I don't guess that was fun.
So I used to also work when I was in high school. I worked a lot at a deli, actually. And you work at a deli, you start meeting people who are constantly coming in at the same time every day. And there was one guy there who was super nice, and he owned a landscaping business. And I was I wrestled in high school, so I always liked staying in shape. And I was straight up, honestly, I was getting fat working at a deli because I was just eating all day, right? So, and I was like, I need to do a job that has more physical activity than standing in front of a grill making bacon, egg, and cheeses. And so I asked him, like, hey, do you think, like, I could maybe try coming to work for you? And he was like, yeah, no, absolutely, no problem. And the money was maybe like $1 more an hour than I was making at the deli. And I was like, all right, let's give it a shot. And he put me on the team to do the labor of building paver patios. And none of the guys spoke English, so there was always a disconnect on exactly what I was supposed to be doing. And and so that, like, the first couple of days, he was like, all right, I don't think you know as much Spanish as I thought you knew, because I would, like, say hello to his workers in Spanish, and that was about where the road ended. And I was like, yeah, no, sorry. And he was like, all right, so why don't you come with, like, the maintenance team? And I said, all right, sure. So the maintenance team, they're the guys who just cut your lawn and trim the edges and everything for you. And they go house to house, and you have to do a whole house within like 15 minutes so he can make his money. And I remember they handed me this weed whacker, and I, like, your job is to go around the perimeter, and, like, I'm just not paying attention with the weed whacker. And as I'm walking, all of a sudden I don't even realize that it's on. And I just, like, weed whacked the whole side of this guy's house, where it just left, like, all these cuts in the aluminum siding, like, just tore right
That's
through it.
That's something I would do, Dom.
And I was like, yeah, it's like, hey guys, do we have any glue or anything, like, and they were like, yeah, I don't think this is going to work out. And I was like, yeah, I don't think so either. I'm just going to go right back to the deli. And so that was the 1 week I worked as a landscaper. Oh, it's funny now. I love, like,
Did they owe you $7? Did they owe you $7 when you were done?
No, I think I owed him probably $700 after damaging that guy's house. But
I'm serious, man. I bet. Okay, so I mean, again, that is absolutely something I would have done. I want to ask you about Unilever Cosmetics. That was another job you had. You were in the research and development department, R&D. How was that, man?
That was really one of the coolest jobs I had. I was about 20 years old. I was a sophomore in college, and it's the same thing. It was that summer in between semesters, and my parents met some people through friends of theirs, and this gentleman, George, he was the vice president of the R&D department. And my dad tells him, like, my son just recently finished working at Miramax. He just needs a summer job now. Mm-hmm. And he was like, oh, does he know how to type? And my dad was like, yeah, no, he knows how to use a computer. He's really good with that kind of stuff. And he goes, all right, great. I think I have a job for him. And they were going to pay me. They did pay me. They paid me $20 an hour, which was, like, huge money for a kid back then, like, to imagine making in the summer. And they were like, listen, we want you to take, they had all these 3-ring binders of the formulas on how they would make, like, Calvin Klein's cologne and Vera Wang products and all of their cosmetic lineup, essentially, like their deodorants and that kind of stuff.
Wow.
So all of those formulas, though, were only written in hard copies in these 3-ring binders. And they were like, we need to digitize all of these 3-ring binders. We predict this will probably take you all summer to do. And I was like, yes, no problem at all. I'm happy to do that. And so I would come in and I would sit down and just bang out these formulas into this database system they had purchased. Excuse me. And I would bang out these formulas into the database system. And as luck would have it, because I was a quick typer, I finished all of the binders in only 1 week. And George was like, I actually thought this would take you all summer to do. So he said, why don't you just come work in the lab with us and just act as an assistant, so when the guys need help, anything you can help with, just please make yourself usable. So, like, absolutely, no problem. So there were some really great engineers and scientists there. I mean, these were people that graduated with biology degrees and chemistry degrees. And I was like, well, I'm a communications major. But we would make, like Vera Wang deodorant. We would make all of the Unilever products that were essentially sold in Sephora, if you would. And a big part of that was, like, hey, we're going to leave this cologne in the window for a week. And then every week you would come back and check its color and viscosity. And then you'd have to write up a report to say, like, well, using propylene glycol in this combination, we found that it would melt if it was left in a room above 80 degrees. Maybe we should increase the amount. And it was just a really cool job because you were hands-on in the development of these products that I would then see advertised later, like 6 months, like coming out now,
Cool.
Like, yeah. And so, and it also had great perks because then like all of these products are dramatically price increased, but there was an employee store. So like a can of Axe deodorant, which is like $7, I would be able to buy for 50 cents, so it was just like, oh, wow. Everybody's getting Varawang cologne, for Christmas.
That is awesome, man. Very cool. Okay,
Yeah.
so let's see here. I want you to give me 3 bands because I need some new music because you list alternative rock and roll as your favorite music genre. Give me 3 names to scribble down I can check out on Spotify later.
I've been listening to this group, the Arkells, spelled Arkells, a lot lately. They're a Canadian band. I also have a little bit of a reggae side that I really like. There's a band.
No, you can skip that one. You can skip that
Skip that?
I mean, you can skip that one as one of the 3 recommendations I need, but go ahead and tell me what it is that you're enjoying.
Jaya the Cat. I've been listening to them for well over 10 plus years now, I think.
All right.
Jaya the Cat, Jaya the Cat.
I'm not writing it down, Tom. What else you got? What else you got, man? Not reggae.
Third, absolute favorite would be the Gaslight Anthem. They are a native Jersey band. They are huge now. The Gaslight Anthem. Multiple albums, and they have a wide range of music that is just extremely heartfelt, and
perfect.
I highly recommend them.
Okay, and anybody else here for that list?
Let's see.
Because remember, I didn't write down Jaya the Cat.
Well, that's really a shame. I was supposed to go see Third Eye Blind, but you know who they are.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. All right. Yeah, man, that's cool. Okay. Of all your answers, dude, this is the one that makes me mad.
Okay.
I ask the question, any interesting talents you have? I can pretty much fall asleep anywhere. Man, I can't stand you now. I don't like you now. I don't like you. I can't fall asleep in a bed, bro.
I can oddly fall asleep just by shutting my eyes, and even like I can still remain sitting upright, and I feel myself fall asleep.
Okay, get off. This interview's over. All right, I can't take it. We're done here.
Thankfully, it has never happened while driving.
That's good. That's good. Of course, you don't really want to fall asleep on public transportation in New York. Be careful, though.
I could tell you that has happened, though. Once in Manhattan, at Manhattan College, a big part of Manhattan College was like going to other colleges in New York City to go to their parties. So we knew some kids at Columbia University, which is like at 125th Street. So we went down there. Spent a night, partying, and it's like, all right, I could either get a cab, which is going to cost $45, which is like $1 million when you're in college, or I can spend $2 and get on the subway, but it's going to take 40 minutes to get me home. And I'm like, all right, I'll take the subway. I got on that subway, I want to say at about 2:30 in the morning, and I woke up at 8 a.m., and I was at the completely south end of Manhattan, and the train was traveling south. So that told me it went all the way north, all the way south, all the way north, and then that's when I woke up, when I was like, wow, now I am like
don't
10
they
miles.
go through the trains at the last stop and
Nope, they don't. It gets to the last stop, and they say, next stop is basically where they came from.
Oh, my goodness.
They just bounce back and forth like Pong on the arcade game.
That is, oh my gosh. Bro.
And somehow my shoes were still on my feet, and my wallet was still in my pocket. And, yeah.
So are you a deep sleeper then? Like, you can fall asleep easily, so you must be, okay, wow. I doubly can't stand you now. Okay. Your earliest memory, I think a lot of people our age can identify with this moment in time when the Challenger space shuttle disaster happened. 1986. You were 3 years old. Wow, I remember being home from school. It was a teacher work day. I was watching Price is Right. Dan Rather comes on and breaks in. I think I must have been 10, right around there. 9. Let's see. Yeah, so I must have been about 9 years old. And my goodness, that is a memory you don't forget. And that was your earliest, huh? Oh,
I want to say that's my earliest news story memory.
Okay.
And then probably from there, so, again, I was only like 3 and change when that happened. And to be honest, like, I don't know if I remember it like like maybe the moment that I saw it it could have very well been when I was 4.5 and they were like, oh, this time last year, this happened.
Okay. You just remember those images.
Yeah. I remember those images from like when I was extremely young, that this was a thing that happened that made the world very much change. And I think a big part of that also was because there was a school teacher who was on the trip, right? It was
Krista
heavily
McCullough.
It was heavily discussed in schools afterwards.
Right.
And maybe that's where it was. So I might not have truly been 3, but the way our memory kind of sets in, I feel like that was my biggest news story. And then probably the next one would have been like the Lorena and John Bobbitt thing, because that was just strange.
Wow! You never know what you're going to get on At the Mic. We go from a national tragedy to one man's very, very intimate tragedy.
Yes.
Okay. Another question here is your most embarrassing moment. Now, again, as we've recently learned during this conversation, over 2 years have passed. So I'm hoping that this experience hasn't been superseded by something else in your life in the last couple of years. But you were once driving a classic car back in your 20s.
Yep.
It was a 73 Chevy Caprice convertible, pulling up to a light, past a cute girl on the left-hand side. Continue the story from there.
Yeah, so I was fortunate that I was able to get a 73 Chevy Caprice convertible, which is a huge, huge boat of a car. It's about 20 or 21 feet long. And I was able to buy it with basically my communion money. And, and it was great. If you've ever seen Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, that was the car that they're driving around, that convertible. That's the same car. And I'm pulling up to this light, and there just happened to be something distracting that was easy on the eyes for me to look at, and I might not have been paying attention that the light had changed and the car in front of me decided to stop way early on the yellow. And the huge tank of an automobile that the Chevy Caprice was just plowed into the back of this woman's car and completely destroyed her bumper. And she gets out of the car, and I'm apologizing to high heaven. I'm really sorry. And all I could think about was there's only one person who knows how this accident happened, and she's smiling and laughing as she walks away.
Hold on a second. She's smiling and she's laughing as she walks away. So my question is, did she not stick around as a witness to the accident? And of course, you'd have to exchange phone numbers and stuff like that. No,
I think she was like, well, now his car's broken, so what am I?
Oh, bro, no. I'm sorry to hear that. I do love your your bucket list, which is to see every Major League Baseball stadium.
Yeah.
I have to ask you though.
It's been a struggle. When
a team changes stadiums, do you have to add that one, or are you just trying to go to each city? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess, that'd be a hard thing to fulfill. Because I even have that with the Yankees. The Yankees.
Yeah.
I started in one stadium.
It's like whack-a-mole. You'd keep trying to play catch-up, And
the Mets, too. Like, I've been to Shea Stadium, and then I've been to Citi Field. So, yeah, it is almost like whack-a-mole. I haven't, obviously, when we sent this to you 2 years ago, I haven't had a chance, and especially baseball has been crazy.
Yeah.
I haven't had a chance to see any new cities, and it's obviously having 2 kids in the last 7 years has kind of put a hindrance on that, but yeah.
Did you get to a Rangers game when you lived in Texas?
Yeah, at Arlington.
Okay,
it's Arlington Stadium, right? Is what it's called.
Yeah, and so well, no, it used to be. It's in Arlington. It's across the street from that stadium. They now play in a shed, a metal shed. They used to play in one of the most pristine parks in all of Major League Baseball.
Yeah,
they said no,
brick.
it's too hot. So now we're going to have them play in air conditioning, which I'm totally fine with. However, it's now. It looks like I've seen somebody make it look like a grill, out of the back patio. So that's what I would ask you. If if you're constantly trying to add stadiums, good luck trying to do that. But if that gets you back here to visit us, then come back and check out the air-conditioned park for the Texas Rangers.
Oh, definitely, man. Absolutely.
But what are you up to then in your goal?
I'm not much further since I've written that, probably. And to what you're saying, yeah, I think it would be mostly for the cities. I've been to San Francisco. I've been to, the Rangers Stadium, the Yankees. I've been to the Mets. I've been to Shea. There's another one here I'm missing. St. Louis Cardinals, really nice stadium. I've been there. There's somebody else I'm missing now. It's bothering me. You know which stadium I really want to see, which shouldn't be a problem for me, is Pittsburgh. That stadium looks really cool with the backdrop.
Yes.
The bridges where the three rivers meet.
It sure does. So you can't just drive by the stadium. You have to actually attend a game at it for it to count, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Well, good luck, man. If you get back to Texas, let me know. Maybe I'll meet up with you in Atlanta sometime when the Yankees are in town there. That'd be fun.
Definitely.
Man, that's cool, man. Good luck. So you grew up with a sister.
I did. Yeah. My sister.
Are we going to talk about her, or?
I suppose we could. It's a very strange story. I mean, my sister was 3 years older than me, but about 4 years ahead of me in school. So, as I graduated 8th grade, she was graduating high school. And we kept moving on. She eventually would go to Virginia Tech, where when she was there, she began dating a player who was on the baseball team there. And he was a great guy. I think, in fact, he ended up being drafted to go to Major League Baseball. I don't remember his name. At the time, I was only 15.
It was Bernie Williams, and you ran
that would have been that would have been something. But at the time, my parents, and it's funny now being a young parent thinking about what they've kind of had to go through with her situation, or this almost like a family tragedy, if you will. So this man she was dating essentially was African American, and it became a little bit of a concern of hers that it wouldn't be accepted with my parents. And I think she was too caught up in the idea that my parents grew up in they were born in the 50s, and they grew up during basically the civil rights movement. So they would never understand this. But my father always stood behind the idea of a man is a man as long as he's a good man, and so that she struggled with that, and nothing would ever amount to the relationship she had with this individual. And my parents did their best to say, we don't have an issue with anything you do as long as you're happy, and we want, you to be with a good person. But somehow that didn't really translate well with her. And it was when she was 20 years old and in between semesters, she was back in Wayne working at a macaroni grill. This was a summer before fall semester. And she met a man who was about 8 years older than her, who was a busboy at the macaroni grill. And then little things started happening around the house that were kind of concerning to my father. He would find things missing around the house. And then at one point, they found this man's license, which in fact, it wasn't even a driver's license. It was a boater's license. And they found it in the seat of the car. And they were like, why are you dating this guy that's almost 10 years older than you? You're still in college. You've been kind of hiding this person from us. Oh. And my sister kind of went off the hinges and said, you guys would never understand. You don't know how hard he's worked. He's gone to law school, but nothing's working out for him. And my father would always ask the good pressing questions. I don't understand how a man who's gone to law school, though, is just busboying tables at 28, 29 years old. Why wouldn't he have a better job? And more importantly, why have you not attempted to introduce this person to us? And so, again, all this is happening while I'm only 16, and I'm still trying to figure out, myself and high school and what's going on. And then eventually there would come a day that it was basically the day my sister was going back to school. And my parents had many conversations with her, please just make sure that you spend your personal time and you invest your love and you invest yourself into relationships that are going to better you, not bring you down. And my sister would always blow that off a little bit to the degree of like, yeah, you just don't understand because you're not me. And my parents, were like, you're 20 years old. Like there is so much more for you to learn still. So, but then lo and behold, there was a large sum of money that appeared to be missing a couple weeks after my sister departed to go back to college. And this would freak you out, man. This was, so online banking was like still really not fully a thing. So my sister actually, under the ruse of playing my mom, went to a bank and said she was my mother. And that she had a passbook with her. Again, this is back when people were still carrying passbooks. I mean, some people still do, but it's very rare now,
That's right.
And so she had the passbook with her and took out a large sum of money that was in the 5 figures. So as my parents discovered this, it was like, how could you have done this? Where is this money? Like, what did you do? And my sister's response was, well, I gave it to this gentleman that I've been dating from the Macaroni Grill. He's trying to start a real estate business. And my parents, I should preface also, both had real estate licenses when we were very young kids. So they completely understood how real estate works. They would always do it as like a side hustle. My dad had owned a couple multifamily buildings for extra income at the time also. So he was like, what are you talking about? Like, this isn't how you go about doing this. Like, where's the money? And so then when she eventually acknowledged that she gave it over and that it was all gone in this business, there was essentially the beginning of the falling out.
I bet.
And then so it was my 17th birthday, 2 days after my 17th birthday, my sister called me to wish me a happy belated birthday party. And I was crying on the phone with her. Like, I don't understand what's going on with you, mom, you, mom and dad. This really seems like you have taken this to the next level with some, unrepairable mistakes I think you're making. And I'm sure I didn't say it as eloquently at 17. It was probably, and she told me, I thought you would be the one who understood all this. And I was like, I can't understand how you can be with someone who you refuse to let the family meet. So, and that was it. That was the last verbal conversation I ever had with my sister. And that was over 22 years ago now. So, because I'm 39 now. So it was over 22 years. And what would then end up happening after that conversation, my parents, they took a defensive method of like, all right, well, if she's not willing to be part of the family and she wants to steal from the family, then, we can work with that also. So my parents had gifted her a brand new Honda CRV when she graduated high school as like a congratulations gift. You're going to need this to drive all the way to Virginia Tech. So my father got on a bus with a one-way ticket to Roanoke. Was that Roanoke? Blacksburg, Virginia, I think. Blacksburg, Virginia. Uh-huh. Yeah, where Virginia Tech is. And he walked onto the school parking lot and drove the car home. And he handed me the keys when he got there. And he said, if your sister doesn't want to acknowledge like some responsibilities and being essentially a nice person with mom and dad, right, I don't see why we should allow her to have these expensive items that we've bought her. And so that was kind of like oh my God, like, first of all, I was like just blown away that he did that, but it was like, I totally get why you did that too. This person stole from you. So why would you continue to allow them to use a vehicle you purchased? And then, time would carry on like a month or so, and my dad would try to check up on her and she would refuse to answer phone calls. And we did end up finding out at this point, being that money had been missing, my parents hired a private investigator who would dig up and determine like this person never went to law school like they told your daughter. They also had a track record of conning older women or conning older women and younger women into like basically these get rich gimmicks. And they presented this to my sister and she still refused to believe it. Like, I don't care what you say. I believe what he says. And we were like, look, he claimed that he went to NYU. They do not have a single record of this person ever even being there to say even, use a bathroom. Like it just doesn't. So, but with that private investigator, we would end up finding out where this individual lived. So my dad comes in and he's like, hey, listen, buddy, I was thinking, I just want to check your car out. Do you mind if I take it for a quick spin? And I said, yeah, no problem at all. And he comes back and he was all broken up and deep into tears. And I said, what's going on? What's going on? And he said, well, I drove by that guy's place. And I should tell you that he was living in a kind of rent-a-room facility where, it's exactly what it sounds like. It's a large house with multiple bedrooms, but everybody has to share a bathroom. And it was in a really not so great neighborhood.
Maybe it was like a halfway house or something?
It looked like it could be, but something similar to that where,
Yeah. Yep.
So, and my dad's like, I was driving by and I noticed there was a car with Virginia plates, and I took it upon myself to maybe just glance inside the car. And he was like, because I thought it was odd that a car with Virginia plates was in New Jersey, parked where this man who's dating our daughter is living. And he said, look at this. The car was registered in her name, as he was able to find the registration in the glove box. He admitted that he didn't have to break into the car. The door was unlocked. Oh. And he's like, so I think your sister dropped out of school and she's living in this house with this man now. And again, remember, my sister is only 20 years old at the time this is happening. She's very, very immature and dating this man that is 28. Who obviously there's a large, I think, maturity difference between 28 and 20. And I think everybody knows that. So without hesitation, my mother said, well, let's go knock on the door and see what's going on. Like, she hasn't called us in several months. Maybe she dropped out of school. Let's go see what's going on. We go to this house. And if you can imagine a large colonial that's dilapidated, when we knock on the door at this time, I think it's like 9:30, 10 o'clock. And the owners of this house who are renting the rooms out, they came and they answered the door. And so it's my father, my mother, and myself. And we said, hey, we're here to see the individual that lives upstairs. And, this is his name. So the woman was like, yeah, no problem. Go up and to the left. And we knock on the door, and he refused to open the door more than like 4 or 5 inches after my father said, like, this is Joe Salvatore on the other side of the door. So at this point, we knew he must be hiding, or my sister's hiding behind the door. And there was an exchange of words, what's going on? Like, where is Christina? So my father, who now at this point has had enough, he basically just puts his foot into the door and pushes this guy back. Now, my dad at the time, let me think about this, 22 years ago, my father was 46. I was 17. And then the next thing I knew, for the first time in my life, like, I saw 2 grown men basically going at it. Oh. And I can tell that this gentleman, or I shouldn't even call him a gentleman, this guy was getting the upper hand on my dad. So I jumped in to try to assist, and I landed a couple good punches, but then my father got kind of shoved to the side. And if you can imagine, the way the stairwell worked was you walked up and then you had to button hook back to the whence, like the way you came. So all these rooms were lined along the wall, and there was a railing that hung over the open stairwell. So once he was able to separate my dad off of him, and I was standing in front of him, I should also tell you that he was probably about 6'2" and 260 pounds and just fat, like just a really large kind of fat guy. And he pushed me against the railing, and then at this moment was holding me by my belt and hanging me with my head pointed straight at the deep end of the stairwell. Now my mother at this moment is pleading to God to, like, not, please don't drop my son. Please don't drop my son. And I could also tell you that in the middle of this fight, my mother ran into the room that was probably only 8 feet by 9, an extremely tiny room. And all that was in there was a bed, a television, and my sister was not. So, my mother was pleading with him, like, please don't drop my son. Please don't drop my son. She started crying. And I was cursing at the top of my lungs and, just full of piss and fire like every 17-year-old kid would be at that moment, thinking you're invincible and not really understanding that if this guy drops me, I'm probably going to break my neck. No. And so eventually he does kind of let go where I'm able to shift my weight backwards, and then I slipped out to the side. And now it becomes a verbal argument. And this whole arrangement, I want to say, maybe lasted like 5 minutes. minutes. But in that 5 minutes, of course, the police were called because it was like, oh my God, what's all this noise and what's all this yelling? So there's lots of cursing and yelling, and the police end up showing up. And as the police are separating it, this guy decided that he wanted to run his mouth about my parents, and he was like calling my parents racist, that they wouldn't understand like what he's got going on with my sister. And he called my father enough names that I ended up losing my cool, and I charged at him. And in that process, we were at the top of the stairwell in like the thin hallway that was kind of running the long way you would over the opening of the stairwell. And I ended up knocking one police officer over because I literally ran straight through him, but that didn't go well either. I would end up being grabbed from behind and handcuffed and then dragged down the stairwell. And I was put on the floor. And again, my mother now is crying and pleading with the police. So I eventually told them I've calmed down. I'm really sorry. And they take me outside. And fortunately, the officer who restrained me, he knew who I was because he had a fellow officer whose son was on the wrestling team with me. So he knew, like, I know this kid is a good kid. What's happening here is not, this is, a family problem. This is not anything. Mind you, everybody separates their ways at this night. My parents are told, you have to wait and see what the sheriff decides to do. This individual may also want to press charges against you. You can press charges against him because, at this time I had a bloody nose. My father had a bruise on his face from getting hit. And so the next day I would get a phone call that he did decide to press charges against all three of us. And the charges were all kind of ramped up on the idea of like, you guys were trespassing. You were trespassing with the motive of assault and with the intent of assaulting me simply based on my race. So I would then have to go back down to the police station. I was fingerprinted, had to give my sworn testimony of what happened. And my parents at this point pleaded with my sister. They sent her an email like, your brother was only following us to go find out if you were there. And it appears that you used our money that you stole to buy this guy a car because you weren't there, but you registered a car and he's using it. And your brother really has nothing to do with this. Can't you get this guy to drop the charges on your brother? He's going to hopefully go to college next year. This is the last thing we really need to be dealing with for him. And we'll figure it out. And my sister's response back was, I'd be happy to think about that if you were to send me $10,000 on a money order.
God.
Yeah, $10,000 in a money order. And if you were to give me a written letter of apology to both myself and the person whose name I'm not going to even bother using. So to that, now again, being 17, full of piss and fire, I was kind of like, yeah, no, I will just go to court and deal with whatever the judge decides. So now maybe I want to say 6 to 9 months have gone by. My parents completely lost communication with my sister, and I have to go to court for this argument. And my case kept coming up sooner because I was juvenile and there was more adult cases, I assume, with what was going on in the world or whatever. So I had to go sit in court, was on the stand, had to describe the whole entire story while this guy was like sitting there and, just being obnoxious and giving dirty faces across the courtroom at my parents and myself. And they kept trying to push that this assault was based on, racist motives and that we were trespassing. But eventually all the charges would be found not guilty because obviously I didn't show up there with my parents on the idea to just assault someone. And then obviously I wasn't there to assault him based on his race. And obviously I didn't assault him. I was defending my parents. But the judge did say, look, you did have a domestic disturbance in a place of residence. So I cannot let Dominic essentially go without some type of penalty. So I then would have to be placed on probation for 6 months, which was I just remember feeling like I cannot believe that now I have to go to probation. And my first day of probation, you're sitting in this room where you have to go speak to a probation officer, who's usually essentially is a cop for the state, the sheriff department from the county. And everybody in there has a story, of course. So like there's a kid about my age and he's asking me, what did you do? And I was like, I just got into a fight, and he was like, and I was like, so what about you? And he's like, oh, I got caught selling heroin on a school playground. And I was just like, wow, this is great. So I was like, this is great. So like, because of my sister and this like basically BS relationship that she decided to have with not such a great individual, I am now sitting in the same office as a drug dealer to kids. And, this is terrific. Like, so
Wow.
that ended up, and again, like the last time I talked to her was a couple days after my 17th birthday. So then to fast forward, I want to say, I think I was about 27. I ended up finding out an email address because she's tried staying in touch with elderlies of my family, like my grandmother, my grandfather, and I could tell you more about that. And so I did email her, and at this time I had gotten engaged, and I was hoping we could move on from it. And I sent her an email like, a lot has changed in 10 plus years. Like, I hope you and I could just maybe have a cup of coffee and try to talk some things out. And her response her first response was very well poised. It was grammatically correct. The use of words made sense. Like it had the proper punctuation. So then when I replied, her next reply, like everything was all over the place. Run-on sentences, completely, using the wrong versions of theirs and twos in places that it's like
somebody was in her email, huh?
So I think that's eventually what it was, and I could tell that either she was bipolar or somebody else was answering emails on her behalf. And so
wow,
that was again over. Yeah, I think I was 27, so that was 12 years ago. And then fast forward to 2 years ago today or so, my grandmother passed away, and we found that she maintained. She maintained a relationship with my grandmother, and then my grandmother, who became towards her later years in life, suffered dementia like most. But my grandmother kept this secret from her whole family, especially my mother, which was just devastating. Because my mom would be there crying about like what happened with my daughter. I haven't seen her in 15 years. Like, I don't even know if she's alive anymore. But my grandmother was maintaining this relationship with her and would keep it completely secret. And then when the will came out, she had somehow finagled my grandmother to leave her like over $40,000. So it was like, once again, it just seemed like you have completely stolen from this family. You set all of this up, and we believe you took, she must have taken advantage of a sweet old lady, to be quite honest. So, so yes, I do have a sister, but I could also tell you in the last 5 years, she's been in some type of trouble with debt. And I keep getting phone calls from debt collectors, like at least I want to say 5 times a year, someone will call and say, she's due to appear in court because she has a small claims put against her, those kind of things. And the last time that I received one of those phone calls, I ended up, I did something that just kind of came out of my mouth without any thinking. And I told the guy on the phone, listen, I heard a couple years ago she passed away, so I don't know how I can help you. And so that's kind of how I went home. That
stops it, huh?
So that stopped it for now anyway. I haven't gotten another phone call in a couple of years for someone looking for her, but I did have to go home and tell my wife that story. Like, it's been over 20 years since I physically talked to her. It's been even longer since I physically have seen her. We did have that one email correspondence, but who knows the truth behind the other side of that computer. So it was like, maybe this is just me moving on now, is that I have to tell myself, and I think what became like really hard from experiencing like this at like such a young age was then, it definitely affected my relationship with people, because you have all this trust in family that like, blood is blood, you'd lay your life down for anyone in your family. But then when you have somebody who's been, like hiding with you, like playing games of hide and seek, or when like mom and dad are having an argument, she would be helpful and say like, come on, let's go sit in the basement and stay out of their way. when I was in high school and before this incident happened, like she would give me rides places and was really actively socially involved in, hey, who's this girl you're talking to? She seems really cool. She's cute. Like always was a good sister, a good sibling. And then like a light switch, stole from the family, lied to the family, and then some. So
you haven't alluded to it, but it definitely sounds like an influence from drugs too.
Oh, I'm sure it was. I do know that she was experimenting with different things with this guy. Yeah. And that, in fact, there was, she did tell me one story, and I kept that private from my parents because I wanted to like be a good brother. But then all these things happened, and I had to tell my parents, like, she did tell me a little bit that she was kind of seeing this guy and hanging out, and that they would take ecstasy together. So then my parents thought maybe this is what's going on, but yeah. So, I mean, it became at a really young age, it was just awkward because you have to immediately grow up essentially overnight. Where you're like, and meanwhile, I had a really strong family foundation, like I was saying, and my parents though, would, you could see it on their faces, how this was just devastating to them and really heartbreaking. And we had a conversation once that my dad had to tell me, look, I don't know how this is going to work out between your mom and I. We love each other and we love you, but with a situation this big, we have different ideas of how we maybe should have handled this. And like some people are casting guilt on one another. How did this happen? It must have been your fault. No, it must be my fault. And he warned me that he thought, we might end up getting divorced after this. So but understand if that happens, it was strictly because we couldn't come to agreements.
Not a reflection on you, Tom.
Yeah. And of course, like I was old enough to understand what he was saying, but at the same time, like you don't want to be 16, 17 years old and hear like, so because of my, whack job sister, now my parents are getting divorced. Like,
the hits just keep on coming.
Yeah, but luckily that didn't happen. My parents are still happily married, very much love each other.
That's
so. Good. Yeah, and I think it increased a bond between my mom and I. Things were always like my dad and I and my sister and my mom, and my mother and I kind of got closer because of it. But yeah, it definitely affected me with relationships.
I bet. I can
trust.
Understand.
Trust
just from your story. Yeah.
Yeah.
Man.
But I don't mean to be a Debbie Downer here at the Mic.
No. We cover a lot of ground here. People can find you on social media.
Yes, I would share my Instagram handle is Live from Boredom.
Live from Boredom.
Which is Live from Boredom was like my AOL Instant Messenger screen name from a long time ago.
How did you get that?
I was just up late one night and I'm sitting at the computer and I'm like, all right, let me try out this instant messenger thing, which is basically AOL Lite. And I was like, I guess I need a new screen name. And I was like, man, I'm really, really bored right now. And I was like, well, here I am, Live from Boredom. And that was it.
And you've just made that your social media handle now, from originally with AOL Instant Messenger.
Yeah, so it's always
all the way
stuck,
to
like
Instagram.
Almost 30 years later or whatever it's been, 20 something years later. Yeah, here we are with Live from Boredom. Go? I will be honest, my Instagram account though is probably boring, like the handle mentions. It's gonna just be pictures of my kids doing funny, silly things and.
That's cute.
Maybe other embarrassing Dommy Cakes moments.
Oh my gosh.
That's really what my handle probably should have been. Was the nickname of Dommy
Wait
Cakes.
Wait a minute. I'm so glad before we finished recording, you just triggered a memory in my brain about you. Because I have an email here that I just looked up. We're looking up old emails today here on At the Mic. October 21st, 2012.
Okay.
This is an email from you to me and JP, a previous guest on this show.
Great guy. Yeah. Proud new father also.
Yes. And we tell the story in that conversation of the birth of his child
No,
in the backseat of a car. In the parking lot of the hospital. Didn't quite make it. But here is an email to us, and it's a work related email. Hey, can you add me to the blah 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 blah? And it's signed Dommy Cakes, and I remember seeing that and going, am I supposed to start calling him Dommy Cakes? Anyway, so I love it. I'm so glad you brought that up here.
So Dommy Cakes was a nickname. Like I mentioned, my best friend Nate in college, just one day he just called me up and he's like, Dommy Cakes, what are you doing? Like, and he just had this demeanor that he could take two words and slap them together and make it sound like it was meant to be.
Yeah, and we all have a friend like that, don't we?
Yeah, and that was it. It stuck. Everybody heard him call me that, and it just stuck in that circle of life for me that everybody knew me there as Dommy Cakes.
So cool.
Or
That's
Nico.
Cool.
Nico was another nickname that floated around a lot in college.
Wait, how do you spell that, and where did that come from?
Nico, Nico. So Nico was like I think it's more the
Dominic.
With you just move that O from the Nick to the O.
All right. I like it. That's pretty cool.
There's a funny story behind that one. I don't know if you want to include this, but so in college, there was that first night when everybody gets together. It's great to see you. How was your summer? I got class tomorrow. And we started talking about how the first day of class is so awkward, and the teacher will be like, is there anything else you would like to go by other than your given name? And I made the joke, like, what if somebody stood up and was like, actually, everybody calls me Smokey at home, or like Bobo Baggins or something, anything.
Now it's your chance,
Right. And so then I laughed, and my buddies were laughing about it, and so one of them was in a psychology class I had with me, and when the teacher asked if there's anything else I'd like to be called, and I said, well, my friends in high school used to call me Nico, and that's completely untrue. No one called me Nico. And so the teacher said, no problem, Nico, that'll do it. And meanwhile, I think it might have been Mitch who was to my right or left, and he was just like holding his laughter. He could, trying to choke his laughter down. So then this psychology class I had, all these 30 to 40 kids in this class knew me as Nico Salvatore, because after day one, they forgot my real name was Dominic. So then like one night we're at a party, and my buddy PJ is like, my girlfriend just said to me, Dominic, that you look a lot like a guy named Nico in her psychology class. Have you been telling people your name is Nico? Like,
that is so great.
And I was
that is so cool. Man, okay. Well, Nico, I appreciate you taking time here today, reminiscing the good old days when we would go to a class and they would ask, what name would you like to go by? As opposed to today's classes, they ask you,
what pronoun?
Preferred pronouns. Dear heavens, I can't. I cannot. Okay, man. Anyway, Dommy Cakes, thanks for making time here. Look for him on Instagram, live from boredom. Dominic Salvatore, thanks for joining me here on At the Mic, buddy.
Oh, man, really, really appreciate it as well. Thank you as well.
Just one of the world's nicest guys, Dominic Salvatore, former coworker of mine at BlazeTV. I appreciate you making time to hear our conversation. Hopefully, you can join us for our next conversation a week from now when I sit down with another former Blaze coworker of mine, a guy that is genuinely a true inspiration with his life story. John Seidel sits down with us a week from now. I hope you will join us for that conversation. Until then, if you feel that we've earned it here with At the Mic, I hope you'll take a moment to rate and review this podcast. Please do give it 5 stars over at Apple iTunes or Spotify. Feel free to drop us a note through atthemicshow.com. That's the website. And don't forget, we've got the YouTube channel. It's youtube.com/atthemic with Keith. You're subscribing over there would be so greatly appreciated as well. Please also take a moment to share, just pick out one episode, that's all we ask, of this podcast with someone in your world. And we're looking to grow this audience. The website to find every episode is atthemicshow.com. We can only grow this audience with your help, so thank you so much. Well, until we sit down again, I hope above all else that you will go be free. And thank you for listening.
This has been At the Mic with Keith, an independent podcast production. Head to atthemicshow.com for archived episodes, sponsor information, and ways to connect.